Hello, fellow gardeners. If you've been following me for a while, you all know that I share a garden guide each month with tips on what to start from seed or transplant. This month's guide is especially crucial, so don't miss out. I have 12 delicious veggie and other plant ideas for you that need to be planted right now. September is a big month for fall planting in my garden. I'll be transplanting major crops like tomatoes, peppers, and much more for the upcoming fall season. If you're new here, hello and welcome. My name is Jara. I've been gardening all of my life, and I'm a professional seed and plant nursery. I love to share my knowledge and teach others how to garden and grow food, so you've come to the right place if you want to improve your gardening skills. Before we get into all the things you should be planting this month, I just want to share 3 free resources that will help keep you and your garden on track. The first is my free printable PDF checklist with all the crops that need to be started from seed or transplanted right now in September. To get it, please follow the link in the description and I will email it to you. Or if you're already part of my email group, I send the checklist with the monthly garden guide automatically at the beginning of each month. The next resource is I'm doing a free garden class right here on YouTube on Sunday, September 8th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, weather permitting. The topic is fall gardening, plus you can ask me questions in real time. And the final resource is next week's video that goes live on my channel Friday, September 6th. It is all about garden tasks that should be completed in September. A lot of those tasks focus on preparing for fall because fall is one of my best gardening seasons. I encourage everyone to take advantage and grow as much as possible. That is why I'm putting out so many resources so you guys can follow along and capitalize on the upcoming season. Now let's get into the 12 crops you can plant or start from seed right now in September. Since we are going into the cooler seasons of fall and winter, everything is going to be based on how much time you have left before your first winter frost date. I'm going to go through each crop in terms of how much time you need to grow it so you can get a harvest before winter arrives. So please, if you don't know your average first winter frost date, go to this website right here, enter in your zip code, and it will give you an average first winter frost date. This is an average date. It could come a little earlier, it could come a little later. It just depends what Mother Nature decides to do this winter. But at least it's a starting point. Find your average first winter frost date and calculate how many days you have left. Using my garden as an example, Plant Maps says that my first average winter frost date is somewhere between January 1st through the 10th. I have 124 days from the date this video goes live to my first winter frost date. That's plenty of time to grow a ton of delicious things. That's why I love Florida and I'll never leave. If you want to garden year-round like me, my brother is a realtor and he will hook you up. I'll put his info in the description. Now that you know how many days you have left, let's proceed to the first crop idea, and that's corn. Standard corn varieties take around 80 to 90 days from seed to harvest. If you direct sow seeds right now, you will harvest in about 90 days. Corn is amazingly accurate and usually is almost always ready at the maturity date given for that specific cultivar when grown in ideal conditions. The only issue though is that corn slows down in growth as the cooler temperatures of fall arrive, and we have to keep in mind that the daylight hours are going to start decreasing. So less warmth and sunlight means slower growth rates for everything, not just corn. With that said, I encourage you to select an early maturing corn variety. There are lots that mature in 75 days or less. I have seen some that mature in 65 days. Choose one of the early maturing corn varieties to ensure you harvest before it gets too cold for their liking. There are also some corn varieties said to perform well in cooler weather. I have not experimented with these cultivars yet. If you have and thought they grew well in cooler temperatures, please drop a comment and let me know the cultivar name. That way I can experiment growing it during the cooler parts of the year in my garden. I have a tutorial about growing corn, which I will link below in the description if you need additional information. At this point in my YouTube journey, I probably have a tutorial for the majority of the crops I'm about to mention, along with seeds and or plants available on my website. I'll include all these links in the description so you can easily find them. Moving along to my absolute favorite veggie crop to grow, and that's tomatoes. Everyone is asking me if it's okay to start seeds for them right now in September. And the answer to that is no. You should have started seeds back in July or August so that you can transplant them right now. Labor Day weekend is my target date to hurry up and finish transplanting all of my fall tomatoes. They need 2 to 3 months time to grow and start producing before winter frost arrives. Smaller tomatoes like cherries produce much sooner than the larger beefsteaks, so you might be able to get a harvest of those in if you start them from seed right now, but you're cutting it really close. I highly recommend you use grow lights to speed up the growth as much as possible. I used to use 5000 Kelvin shop lights to grow my tomatoes from seed, and it would take around 10 to 12 weeks for them to be ready. I have now switched to official grow lights because they are ready in half the time, like 6 weeks. For real, a good light source will make that big of a difference. This is especially helpful if you're behind on starting your seeds. I'll link in the description to the Mars Hydro grow lights that I like to use. It is also hurricane season for a lot of us. If I get hit, the flooding kills my tomato plants. So I'm growing all of my tomatoes in grow bags during the fall season. That way, if a a hurricane comes, they survive. So just something to think about. I have a whole playlist all about growing tomatoes, so I will link that below. It will give you lots of ideas on planting, trellising, and pruning tomatoes. And just like the tomatoes, it is too late to just be starting peppers and eggplants from seed. These take even longer to get to size and start producing when compared to tomatoes. I sowed my fall peppers and eggplants way back in early July. They are now big enough to transplant. So if you have 4 to 5 months before your first winter frost date, then go ahead and transplant some peppers and eggplants this month in September. I noticed that peppers and eggplants are more cold sensitive than tomatoes. They slow down in growth tremendously once cooler weather arrives. So it's very smart to plant them in a spot that you can easily cover them just to keep them a little extra warm when temperatures drop. Peppers and eggplants are actually perennial plants as long as the cold or a pest or a disease doesn't kill the plants. I have some severely neglected Black Beauty eggplants that are over 2 years old now. I don't water or fertilize them at all. It's growing in my native Florida sandy soil with no amendments, and it's still producing very well. So plant once and enjoy for many years. Next, we have beans. Fall is such a great time to grow green beans, all sorts from bush to pole or vining beans. If I direct sow seeds right now, I will harvest and have fresh green beans just in time for Thanksgiving. Bush beans are great for smaller gardens since the plants stay compact. You can sow 9 bush bean seeds in just 1 square foot. Some of my favorite cultivars include Provider, which is a very good early producing bush bean cultivar, and I really like Golden Yellow Wax because of its buttery yellow color. In my experience, pole or vining beans produce more than bush beans though. For pole beans, I really like Kentucky Blue right now, but I also love the deep purple color of purple potted pole beans. I like to grow pole beans on this kind of a trellis. It is so easy to make. I attach a 10-foot electrical conduit pipe to the top of 2 T-posts with some PVC fittings. Then I weave this heavy-duty vinyl mesh trellis that I get from Amazon through the pipe. This thing is very sturdy. It doesn't fall down if I get hit with a hurricane, and it supports heavy crops like tromboncino, rapicante, and loofah. So a very versatile and inexpensive trellis system option. Our next crop is very similar to beans, and that's like southern peas, cow peas, black-eyed peas, or in any kind of bean that you would grow to dry. If you still have a solid 4 months before your first frost date, you can easily direct sow seeds for all of these things. They start producing in about 2.5 months and continue producing over the course of several weeks. I do not recommend that you direct sow seeds for yard-long beans or winged beans right now, unless you're in garden zones 11 and up. I find that they are a little cold sensitive and just don't thrive or grow very well during the fall as compared to when I grow them during the summer. Next, let's talk about squash. Summer squash, like zucchini or patty pan squash, produce in under 60 days. So go ahead and direct sow seeds or transplant those types of squash right now if you have like 3 months time before your first winter frost. They can start producing in 2 months, but you want additional time for production and harvest. They will keep pumping out squash over the course of several weeks. Some examples of early squash cultivars include early white patty pan squash, which is ready to harvest at around 60 days from seed, or gray zucchini, which is ready in about 50 days. This is all assuming ideal growing conditions and fertilizing, which helps too. Moving along, we have cucumbers. In general, the smaller cucumber varieties are the first to start producing. So right now is a great time to plant mini or pickling cucumbers. Boston pickling is a great standard heirloom variety for making pickles, and it can be ready for harvest in as soon as 55 days from sowing the seed. A new one that I'm trialing out this season is Parisian gherkin, which is a miniature cucumber. It can be ready in as little as 50 days. Cucumbers are another crop that I love to grow on my electrical conduit trellis. Cucumbers have small root systems, so you can really cram them in and sow densely. I have never had nutritional deficiencies when I plant this close, but I fertilize them pretty regularly anyways because that helps them put out lots of new healthy green growth to outpace all the diseases. I cannot grow cucumbers here in Florida without getting diseases. It's just the norm, so don't freak out. Spray with 1 cup of hydrogen peroxide per gallon of water to slow down the spread of leaf diseases. And that works for all crops, not just cucumbers. I'm so excited about the next category of crops because it is finally time for me to start sowing seeds for them. And that's small greens like lettuce, bok choy, spinach, Swiss chard, mustard greens, and tatsoi. Depending on what you're growing, you could harvest a large head of lettuce like this bronze mignonette in under 2 months time from seed. Or grow a loose leaf type of lettuce like black-seeded Simpson, where you don't have to wait for it to grow into a huge head because you can harvest the smaller baby leaves as needed in probably less than 30 days. I prefer the baby greens for things like arugula, Swiss chard, and mustard greens for the best flavor anyways, so typically I start harvesting those in under 45 days. If your outside temperatures are below 85 degrees Fahrenheit, you can go ahead and direct sow seeds for all of these types of greens. If it's above 85 degrees Fahrenheit outside like me here in Florida, then you need to sow the seeds indoors to get a head start on your greens. Or just wait until things cool down and are below 85 degrees Fahrenheit to direct sow the seeds. That's starts happening for me in October. But I do like to get a head start, and I especially like to grow out little transplants so I can fill up my green stock garden planters with them. I get a mini greenhouse and stick it in some corner of my house with some grow lights to sow seeds indoors. I sow small greens in 72 cell seed trays because I can sow a lot of them. They should be ready to transplant in around 4 weeks. Then we have the heat tolerant or tropical types of greens like Malabar spinach and New Zealand spinach. If you have at minimum 4 months before your last spring frost date, or maybe you're in an area that barely even gets a frost, go ahead and direct sow seeds now. These types of greens will produce over a much longer period of time when compared to something like a lettuce. So I like to grow them too. Now let's talk about another huge group of veggie crops, and that's things in the Brassicas family. This includes broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, kale, and much more. To grow brassicas properly, you really need to pay attention to temperatures. Plants are very temperature sensitive, way more than what people think. If you're struggling to get the timing right on anything you're trying to grow, study its ideal temperature range and plant it into the garden when that occurs. So brassicas, their ideal temperature range is 60 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. If you're in a colder climate, that temperature range could be starting right now in the month of September. So go ahead and start transplanting brassicas. Those of you in warmer climates like me here in Florida need to wait a little bit. I like to transplant brassicas in the first month of fall where the max average high temperature is at 85 degrees Fahrenheit or below. For me, that occurs in October, so I have to wait a little bit longer to start planting. If I had to choose just one broccoli type thing to grow, it would be Piracicaba Brazilian sprouting broccoli. It's just so easy to grow and productive. I love it so much I made a video dedicated to it. If I had to choose just one cauliflower, it would be Violetta Italia. It's a purple cauliflower that produces massive heads every time I grow it. Just very reliable. I have quite a few videos about growing Piracicaba, Violetta Italia cauliflower, and many more brassicas. I'll link all of those videos below, and of course, I have seeds on my website. Okay, on to the next crop, which is all traditional herbs like these right here. The majority of herbs we like to use in the kitchen come from Europe, typically, so they like mild, temperate temperatures and drier soils. Think Mediterranean conditions. They don't grow very well in the high heat of my summer, but they grow great during my fall, winter, and spring. So I capitalize on the upcoming season to grow all the herbs I can think of. I sow seeds in 72 cell seed trays in September and transplant once they are big enough. A lot of these herbs are actually perennial if you can get them to survive. In Florida, that's a challenge because they don't like high heat or all of the rain. My herbs grow so much better in grow bags, containers, or raised beds because it has better drainage. Plus, I can move them into a spot that gets afternoon shade during the summer. If you're in an area that doesn't snow and your ground does not freeze, you can plant root herbs like ginger, turmeric, and galangal in the ground. Just know they will go dormant once the temperatures drop, and most likely the upper foliage will die back. This happens in my garden every single fall and winter, and I'm in zone 10A. But just as long as the rhizomes under the ground don't freeze, they will sprout again in spring. You could grow them in a large pot and just bring them indoors during the winter. They might still lose their leaves though, they just know it's winter time. And I want to show you like one of my absolute favorite herbs right now. This is Papo. I did a whole YouTube video just about this herb because it's so unique. It is nearly the most perfect substitute for cilantro that I could find, and it thrives even in the high heat of my Florida summer. Look at how bushy and lush these leaves are, and it has such a nice fragrance. I just want to dig my head in there. It smells just like cilantro. The reason why I started growing papalo is because I have a few family members that when they eat cilantro, it tastes like soap to them, but papalo doesn't have that kind of effect. It's not supposed to taste like soap at all. So I really like to use this as a fresh cilantro substitute. Once these bushes start blooming, I'll have tons of seed available on my website. All right, moving along. Next, we have ground cherries. They are related to tomatoes. They look like a yellow cherry tomato, but have a papery husk like tomatillos. They don't like extreme heat, so I grow them during the fall, winter, and spring. If you're a cold climate gardener, then it's best to grow them during your spring, summer, and fall. They take about 3 months to start producing from seed. The number one thing about growing ground cherries from seed is that the seeds need light to germinate. So just sprinkle the seeds over the soil, pat them down, do not cover with soil, and water them in. Then place them under a bright light source. They should sprout within a few days. Lastly, I want to discuss planting things for the bees and butterflies. The monarch butterfly fall migration is going to begin soon. Plant as many nectar-rich flowers as possible. Butterflies really prefer large and flat flowers like zinnias and tithonia. They also like flower spikes from liatris and butterfly bush. It is important to also plant butterfly host plants. These plants are food sources for butterfly caterpillars. Each butterfly species has very specific host plant requirements. For example, Gulf fritillary butterflies use passion fruit vines as a host plant. Black swallowtail butterfly caterpillars use citrus trees, fennel, and parsley as host plants. So if you grow any any of those, don't spray them if you see the plants are getting munched on. Plant way more than what you need, knowing some of them might get sacrificed to the caterpillars. Monarch butterflies use milkweed as their host plant. There is a lot of debate over planting milkweed because it is harboring a parasite that infects the butterflies. It causes them to be disfigured and shortens their lifespan if they survive. I have read so many articles about the issue. I'm going to follow the recommendations made by the Florida Native Plant Society that says to plant only native milkweeds. So research which milkweed cultivars are native to your area before planting. Late summer is also a dearth period for bees, meaning there is not much nectar or pollen for them to forage in the wild. So help the bees out by planting their favorite flowers. Here's a bunch of ideas for you. People say bees prefer blue and yellow flowers, but I find them on all of my flowers no matter the color. Different bee species prefer different flowers. I think the key is to plant a variety for them to choose from. It is also smart to plant flowers close to your veggie crops to bring bees into the vicinity and increase pollination. I hope you really liked this list I put together for September. If I missed any interesting seed or plant ideas, feel free to drop a comment below or let me know what you're most excited to grow this fall. If you enjoyed this video, a big thumbs up would mean a lot to me and it helps my channel out more than you know. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you know right away when I post new videos. I recommend you watch my tomato playlist next to see how I grow hundreds of delicious heirloom tomatoes during my fall garden season. Thanks for watching and happy gardening.